Hi, welcome back. I'm Simi Lerner, and this is the Judaism from Within podcast, the podcast dedicated to the works of Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, or explaining them in a modern context. And just a bit of housekeeping, I've sort of put together or reorganized ravhirsch.org. I've had it for some time, but I put a bit of effort into reorganizing it and allowing us to see different categories and different topics in a far easier way. So the weekly parsha, stuff that I did a couple of years ago from Rav Hirsch that doesn't come up on your feed as a podcast, but is there in the archive. So now you can go to ravhirsch.org and go to the topics and go to the parsha and just listen to Rav Hirsch on that particular week. Some of them are a lot of fun, and some of them have a very interesting cultural relevance today. Because the goal with doing these podcasts was to find an idea from Rav Hirsch in the weekly parsha, but try and connect it in a meaningful way to our society, to our experience. So hopefully you can check it out, enjoy, love to hear your thoughts. And now jumping into this week's topic. This week's topic is suicide, self-harm, preserving one's health. Now, this commandment in the Torah, this idea that the Torah demands that we take care of our health, obviously is a complex issue, especially in today's day and age where we are more aware and more sensitive to people's mental health. Rav Hirsch is going to approach the positives and the negatives, the positives being preserving your health, doing actions to take care of your health. That's why we'll reference aspects of Chazal that refer to the importance of taking care of one's health, eating healthily, doing exercise. These are all the positive expression of looking after yourself, and the negative, which is not to cause self-harm, damage yourself, do something that would hasten your death, or, God forbid, cause your death. So this is the topic for today, and obviously, I'm just going to give the warning out there that if this is something that you are sensitive to, perhaps miss this one or read it inside at your own pace, because I'm going to be giving over, to the best of my ability, Rav Hirsch's interpretation about why this is a law. Why does it have to be a law? Why does it fit into this category of law? And then his encouragement and his, I suppose you could call it his chizuk to a person who is struggling, but it is worth pointing out, Rav Hirsch's method of giving chizuk is to be very direct, to call upon the better part of us, but not necessarily in the sweet, coaxing way that people are perhaps used to. It's a method of encouragement that I personally find inspiring, but not everyone does. For example, rather than telling you you're so special, you have such a beautiful neshama, why would you want to hurt yourself? Rav Hirsch takes a different approach, perhaps a more real approach, that if you're here, there is a reason for you to be here. He calls upon the deeper part of us that is ennobled by responsibility and purpose and meaning, and the moral responsibility to live out the best life you can. Now, obviously, when we take into account a person's mental health and where they are and what they are susceptible to hearing, each case is going to be individual. Each case is going to be unique, and thereby this isn't a fix-all situation for a person suffering. I would even go so far to say if a person is suffering, this isn't the podcast. It is more for an understanding of a commandment in the Torah, and the basis for that commandment is inspiring to people, not so much to draw a person out of the quagmire of depression. So with that sort of, I suppose, warning and caveat in mind, let's open the conversation. And with a focus on self-harm and suicide, because even the preserving of one's life in the positive, to a certain extent, is a bit of a weird commandment. Why is it a commandment? Why is it under the category of chukim? Once again, let's just draw our mind back into this discussion. A chayk is that which, a commandment I wouldn't know without being commanded. I understand not to hit you because I don't want to be hit myself. That's a mishpat, that's a judgment. But a chayk, a statute, requires or rests on premises unstated, that if I had the God's eye perspective would make sense, but I don't have access to those. So Rav Hirsch does his best to give interpretations based off his understanding of the Torah to give rise to these principles and these premises that aren't obvious. But when it comes to suicide, what's going on here? And Rav Hirsch says that when it comes to suicide, what is the evil that's being committed? What's the wrong that's being done? Well, it's a metaphysical principle. Not so much metaphysical that Rav Hirsch starts talking about energies, but he does focus in on the essence of a human being. Because intuitively, it's my body. I shouldn't take people's stuff, I shouldn't hurt other people, but if there's something that I own, it's my body, it's me, it's who I am. I can do with it as I please. It's not so clear-cut that God can tell me what to do with it and what not to do with it. What gives him the right? It's my body. Why do you have a right over it? You can't own someone else. Ownership of another person doesn't really make sense, even if you bring into account God. Ownership isn't something that you can own if it's me. You can own things that you make, you can own things that you produce, you can own things that you buy. But if you create something with individuality and a feeling of self, that very feeling of self is theirs. You can't buy it. That's why slavery from a philosophical standpoint isn't something that's going to be essential. This is a whole discussion. But the most intuitive relationship we have to ourselves is that we are our own. What's the basis for saying don't end your life? What's the moral or the philosophical basis to tell a person, no, you don't get to take away your own life? Even the language we use to talk about it seems nonsensical. I don't have the right to take my own life. Why not? And this is where Hirsch sort of lasers in or focuses in on the essence of a human being. From a materialistic standpoint, there is just me and my existence, which is material, and thereby, of course, my body is mine. But if you put on the lens of the Torah, the lens of the Jewish tradition, it's not so clear-cut. There are two aspects of a person. There is the spiritual aspect and there is the physical aspect. Now, Rav Hirsch doesn't go down the road of defining the spiritual essence of a person, but we're committed to its existence. This comes to mind from an essay that he wrote in the Collective Writings, volume, I think it's number 9, in response to a Christian who accused the Jewish people of not having a notion of a soul. And he develops, obviously, it's a longer discussion about why that doesn't make sense. Well, everyone throughout history had a notion of the soul. Obviously, the Jewish people did as well. Why that's not discussed in Tanakh is a different discussion. But what Rav Hirsch develops is an appreciation of the nature of the soul for the Jewish people. And to cut a bit of a long story short, the soul and the body are two essential aspects of what it means to be human. We don't denigrate the body, and we don't lordify the soul disconnected from the body. The body is the tool we use to live out our purpose, but it's not a spacesuit type metaphor from Plato. It's essential, meaning the point of a soul, the point of being in existence is to accomplish purpose, to have accomplished purpose. The soul isn't a aspect of you that you could do away with in an ideal world. No, in an ideal world, you have a body. In an ideal world, you are living out purpose and meaning and living out the good in the world, following what we're supposed to do in the world. And a body is essential to that. Rav Hirsch often points out that the danger of denigrating the body. What is the moral ill of denigrating the body is that you lordify the soul, and that feels so spiritual, but then that leads to moral degradation. If you laud the soul and ignore the body, there's one side that you don't take care of the body, but the other side is like what the body gets up to is, it's the body. There's a trend within Christianity and Gnosticism that sort of plays around these sort of areas, where the body is like evil and ick, in which case what it gets on with is fine as long as the soul is pure, as long as I feel close in love to God. That is not the Jewish way. Your body and your soul are essentially connected, and that connection is the meaningful part of what we call spirituality, of what we call living in line with the divine. Thereby, that glue that holds the soul and the body together, and I know we're using borrowed language here and it's tricky, but Rav Hirsch points to that glue about what is severed when a person ends their life. You're severing that which has been made. And Rav Hirsch develops this on so many levels, because if that glue is being held, there's a reason for it to be held. If your body is connected to your soul right now, there is a reason for that, which means there is a purpose for you to be here right now. It's not haphazard. It's not random. That's the principle that a Jew lives with, that a human being lives with. And if your body and soul are connected, there is still what you have to accomplish. Otherwise, it wouldn't be held together. Now, using that let's call it a metaphysical lens, that your existence in this world isn't haphazard and kind of just flowing along. No, that the joining of that most spiritual aspect of you to the most physical, which is what we call a human being that has the potential to live in line with God. Thereby, If you sever that in another person, you've murdered them. If you sever it within yourself, you've broken a bond that wasn't yours to break. You broke a bond that needed to be there by the fact that you are existing with that bond existing. It meant it was supposed to be there, meaning there was what for you to accomplish. Whether you can see that right now or not, thereby to end your life, you are basically saying, I have no more purpose in this world. There is no good I can still do. And Rav Hirsch says there is no good I can live out to my fellow man or woman. There is no good I could live out to an animal. There is no tree I could protect. Where are you coming from to say that? The point of suicide being such a moral ill is because it looks at the purpose that I am here to accomplish, no matter how dark the times may seem. Rav Hirsch develops this in his discussion on Iyar when it comes to the Omer, and the darkness that the Jewish people experienced throughout history, but held to their faith, because they believed there was a purpose for them to be here that couldn't be accomplished by someone else. So, to sum up this point, why? Why should I not commit suicide? Rav Hirsch's answer is threefold. The first is because you are breaking something that is not yours. You are breaking something that was put into place for a purpose. Then to the second point, that purpose is a responsibility that you have to live out in the world. There is a good you are meant to do. There is a good that only you can accomplish by the dint of that bond existing. And lastly, that means you are of value. You are of worth by the fact that you exist. Now, this isn't saying you are valuable because you have a neshama. No, this is saying you are of value because you exist in this world. And by the fact you exist, you follow the chain back to say there is a reason for you to be here. There is a purpose for you to live out. That is where your value comes from. So on the ground, why is every person endowed with an infinite of value, the sovereignty of the individual, the dignity of the individual? This is why. Because you exist, and your existence isn't random. Why does a person have value? Because there is what they are here to do that has not yet been done. And on that note, I want to wish you all a wonderful week, and till next time.